Greetings. Hello, everybody. My name is Guillermo Gil. I'm a professor and writer from Puerto Rico. Feeling happy and privileged to once again be a part of this conference. I'm going to be reading my presentation for today. It is entitled "My name is Guillermo and I am a blank space. Notes on what to make of yourself when others had made you out to be something you're not." And it's part of a series of autoethnographic essays that I've been publishing over the past few years. 1. In 2016, I got my picture taken by famed Nuyorican photographer and multimedia artist ADAL for an anthology of Puerto Rican poets. For the picture, I posed with a handwritten sign that read, "More poets, less lawyers. I am a poet and a lawyer." And the picture at the time signaled for me that I had made it as a writer in my homeland. ADAL was, after all, the man responsible for one of the iconic images of one of our most iconic and my personal favorite of all Puerto Rican poets, Pedro Piedra. To stand there posing for ADAL felt like I was being allowed to stand in camaraderie with the writer whose work, from both an aesthetic and social-political perspective, resonated most profoundly with me as a young reader and writer, even as our respective backgrounds were so different. Pietri was part of the mass migration of poor and working-class Puerto Ricans who arrived in New York City in the mid-20th century. He became a poet, you could say, amid his militancy with the radical Young Lords Party. I was a private school kid from one of the premier island suburbs whose family had ties with the island's pro-statehood government. But I became a poet, you could say, amid my own militancy with radical political movements in Puerto Rico. So, to be honest, on that day in 2016, I didn't feel like too much of a phony or a poser. On the contrary, I felt like I had done the work necessary both within and outside the contours of the page to stand there in front of that famous and much respected man with the camera. The anthology was published later that same year. In the book, I appear with my hands in my pockets, but ADAL did use the photo of me holding up the sign to promote the book across the social media platforms. 3 years later, in March 2019, a Photoshop version of that photograph appeared on social media platforms. The sign now read, "My name is Guillermo and I'm a sexual predator." I had just been falsely accused of sexual assault by a former University of Puerto Rico student who posted a video to her Facebook and Instagram accounts, which quickly went viral. The Title IX investigation that followed found the accusation to be baseless and pointed to the political motivations behind it. The person responsible for the video had a gripe with the feminist collective I was associated with. I was widely perceived to be their lawyer. Since then, I have been hesitant to look at either image. You could say the fake one looms over the original, or the fake one has come to substitute the original in my mind. In either case, the existence of the fake, or rather the event that made it possible and gives it meaning, signaled for me the end of my career as a writer and activist in my homeland. I had been made into something else by the same people, communities, and collectives that I work with or for, and that I sincerely felt that I belonged to, or had wanted to belong to. ADAL's book still today is atop at the coffee table in my mother's house. As she doesn't have Facebook, I don't know if my mother ever saw the photoshopped image. So for her, it's still a pretty book to look at. A come sit and look at what my son did sort of book, whenever she has company over. For me, although the book has no physical trace of the ordeal, it's very much a come and sit and look at what was done to me sort of object. 2. I first came upon the Photoshop picture of me in an emerging writer's Facebook profile. He too was a former student of mine. I published his first short stories, was one of his references for his MFA application, and had just reviewed his first book not 2 weeks before the video came out. He had shared the review on his profile, publicly thanking me for my support in his burgeoning career. Now he was denouncing me as a rapist and abuser. Upon seeing this, I searched my Gmail account for my most recent exchanges with him and found a message he wrote asking for the recommendation letter. It reads, in part, "You've known me since I started undergraduate studies. Thanks to you, I published my very first story, had my first editorial experience, as well as my first public readings. You know what I have to give, the heights I can reach." End quote. I'm tempted here to alter or twist the text of his email. I know now what my former student has to give, the lengths he can go to as it pertains to cruelty or callousness. But this would be unfair, right? I would be tethering my former student's character to some unfortunate posts from years ago that do not speak to who he is as a person now. Hell, they might not even speak to who he was as a person then. Of course, the posts were not simply unfortunate in a vague sort of way. The video and the online and offline actions it provoked had direct consequences on my life. as it pertains to my writing life. Readings and speaking engagements and publication contracts were rescinded. As of this writing, for example, I have been left off the Puerto Rican Writers Project, a Mellon Foundation-funded initiative that purports to create a master archive of all Puerto Rican poets. The young writers' actions were simply part of the wave of outrage sparked by the video and could easily be explained away by citing peer pressure, or by a perfectly legitimate concern that a perceived relationship with me would hinder his own chances at making it as a writer. Plus, how much thought really goes into people's online activity regardless of the subject matter or the real-life effects it could have on others? Moreover, the photoshopped image was not by any means the worst post. That distinction belongs to the picture shared on social media where my eldest son, then 9 months old, appears not front and center. The young writer shared those images as well. 3. For purposes of this presentation, I pulled up the 2 images and sat looking at them for a few minutes. Then I pulled up a screenshot of the emerging writer's post. Then I flipped open ADAL's book and looked at the picture in there. Then I tried to remember how I came up with the idea for the sign. I remembered that I didn't come up with it per se, that somebody had shared an image of a graffiti that read "More poets, less lawyers" from somewhere in Latin America. Then I started thinking about what being a poet means or meant to me, what being a lawyer means or meant to me. Then I started thinking about which of those photos is the most iconic image of me. The one where I'm holding the sign that I wrote, the one where the sign is twisted to say something I'm not, the one my mother cherishes inside the book she keeps on the coffee table. Then I stopped doing what I was doing and tried to do something else. 4. After the video came out, the running line of posts coming out of my fellow writers and activists was that the allegation was a much awaited confirmation of what they already suspected about me. What's intriguing here is that the suspicion was not related to my sexual conduct or misconduct. There was no stories to tell, no other accusers, no one to say that the allegation, no matter how vague and contradictory and strange, rang true to their own experience with me. There was only who I was, or who I was perceived to be, based on my family name and my social class background. Of course I would end up betraying the cause somehow. Of course I had to be a rapist because I had never belonged. Of course. And so, if I'm being honest, I see the same thing in both the original and the fake image. Or rather, I see myself holding on to the same thing, even though the signs bear 2 radically different messages. If I'm being honest, the quip about poets and lawyers in the original picture was not a show of confidence or pride in myself, but an attempt of pandering to the literary and political circles I belong to. For years, I felt I had to prove myself over and over to my peers as it pertained to my authenticity as a poet and an activist. In this sense, the actual sign I was holding was an offering, a concession, or more accurately, a surrender. I was giving myself over to the judgment and potential approval or disapproval of others. All the fake sign does is show this unhealthy dynamic to be true, or at least true to me. 5. My literary career is not over, and the most iconic images of me are stored on my phone or in the phones of the people closest to me. If you search for it, though, you will find the one ADAL took, as well as the Photoshop version, along with the video and news reports on or around that event in 2019. If you search a little more, you will also find my own writing reflecting on the ordeal. I have often been reminded that I can pay someone to perform a scrub of search engines and such to make these publications harder to find. I've opted against doing this because, though these images and accounts offer nothing of truth as it pertains to who I am or what I've done, I continue to be tethered to them, whether they appear in a Google search or not. I call this sort of insight poetic, in so much as it makes no sense to the lawyer in me. It's poetic in so much as it signals a willingness or a willfulness to keep on facing that which one would most reasonably want to forget or avoid. This, in the end, is what Pedro Pietri's work taught me, and it is also what I sought to teach my own students, including the student who made the video and the ones who shared the fake pictures of me. It's on them if they didn't learn anything. Thank you so much. Again, this is part of a series of writings, which starts with an essay entitled Autoethnography of the Batfin, which was published in the Journal of Autoethnography, and a couple of essays that appear in the literary and cultural magazine, The Autoethnographer. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.